Have you ever silenced yourself, not because you lacked something to say, but because you feared what would follow? The raised eyebrow, the disappointment, the conflict that would crack the illusion of peace. You told yourself it wasn't worth it, that it was maturity, that you were being wise. But were you? In reality, every time you suppress your voice for the sake of comfort, you abandon a part of your truth. You shrink a little. You trade authenticity for acceptance, and that is a dangerous bargain. We've been taught that conflict is something to avoid, that silence equals strength, that yielding is nobler than fighting. But Nietzsche challenges that lie at its root. He saw clearly that what we call virtue is often fear in disguise, fear of rejection, fear of isolation, fear of being too much. And as long as this fear governs you, you are not free. You are compliant, you are digestible. You are, in Nietzsche's words, a product of slave morality. This is not a call to be combative, to argue for sport, or to reject kindness. It is a call to face the uncomfortable truth. Real freedom begins when you stop betraying yourself in the name of harmony. If you want to live with dignity, with integrity, with soul, you must reclaim the strength to enter the fire of conflict. This is the path we will walk together, through fear, through silence, through resistance, toward freedom. Most people grow up believing that avoiding conflict is a sign of emotional maturity. We're told that peace should be preserved at all costs, that letting things go is the noble thing to do. But what if that belief is the very reason so many of us feel hollow, anxious, and invisible? Silence may look like self-control, but often it's simply fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being disliked, fear of disturbing the fragile structure of relationships built on compromise. And so we smile when we want to shout. We agree when we're quietly screaming no. We bow our heads and call it peace. Nietzsche understood that much of what passes for harmony is not peace. It's submission. It's the learned behavior of those who've been trained to believe that their truth is too loud, too risky, too inconvenient. He saw that behind many mature decisions lies an unwillingness to confront discomfort. But here's the truth. Every time you deny what you really think or feel, you abandon yourself. You slowly dissolve into someone who exists to keep others comfortable. And that's not virtue. That's erasure. This false harmony doesn't come without a price. Over time, your voice weakens, not because you've lost your opinions, but because you've convinced yourself they're dangerous. You begin to believe that your presence must be filtered, softened, or hidden. And what for? For the illusion that things are fine, for relationships that can't withstand honesty. That's not peace. That's quiet suffocation. Real harmony is not built on silence. It is built on truth. And sometimes that truth comes in the form of disagreement, boundary setting, even confrontation. Not to destroy connection, but to make it real. If your peace demands your silence, it is not peace. It's a performance. If your kindness comes at the cost of your clarity, it's not virtue, it's fear. And fear, no matter how polite, does not set you free. People rarely admit to themselves that they're afraid. Instead, they rename their fear as wisdom. They say, I didn't speak up because I'm mature, or I let it go because I'm above it. But often, the truth is simpler. They were afraid of what would happen if they dared to say what they meant. Nietzsche was relentless in exposing this self-deception. He recognized that many of our so-called moral choices aren't rooted in strength. They're strategies for avoiding pain. We convince ourselves we're good when really we're just scared. It's easier to claim the high ground than to admit you're unwilling to take a stand. It's easier to seem forgiving than to risk confrontation. But virtue that arises from fear is not virtue at all. It's a defense mechanism. Our culture reinforces this illusion. It praises passivity. It tells you that turning the other cheek is admirable, even when it leaves you bruised and unheard. It celebrates the one who doesn't cause trouble, while punishing those who do. But silence is not always noble. Sometimes it's just surrender with a moral disguise. To break this pattern, you have to examine your motives. Are you avoiding conflict because you value peace, or because you fear discomfort? Are you letting things slide because you're grounded, or because you're afraid of being seen as difficult? This isn't about attacking yourself, it's about being honest, because as long as you call fear grace, you'll never confront it. And if you never confront it, it will rule your life from the shadows. Strength is not measured by how quiet you can be. It's measured by how clearly you can speak when everything in you wants to hide. Virtue does not mean disappearing for the comfort of others. It means showing up fully and taking responsibility for what you believe. When you avoid conflict long enough, something starts to grow inside you, something bitter, dense, and corrosive. That thing is resentment. Resentment is what happens when you have too many unsaid words, when you swallow your anger and call it grace, when you let others step on your boundaries while you smile and pretend everything is okay. Nietzsche saw resentment as a slow poison. It doesn't explode. It seeps. It settles in your thoughts, changes how you see others, and twists your sense of identity. You start to believe that being quiet makes you righteous. You begin to think you're better than those who speak up. But deep down, you know it's not strength that keeps you silent. It's fear. The danger of resentment is that it creates a false self. You become someone who is constantly agreeable, outwardly calm, yet internally unsettled. You play the role of the kind one, the one who forgives, the one who lets things go, but inside, you're collecting debts you'll never ask to be repaid. And worst of all, you begin to resent yourself for not speaking, for not standing, for not protecting what mattered. Resentment doesn't only hurt your relationships, it deforms your perception. It makes you suspicious, even paranoid. You assume others mean harm, not because they do, but because you never said what you needed when it mattered. To stop this poison, you must change your relationship with confrontation. Not to fight recklessly, but to speak honestly. Not to dominate, but to defend your integrity. It starts small. Say what you mean, even if your voice shakes. Set one boundary, even if it feels selfish. Let your anger teach you, not control you. There's nothing noble about swallowing your truth. There's nothing wise about letting yourself rot from within. Resentment is not the cost of being good. It is the consequence of abandoning yourself for too long. There's a strange guilt that often comes with setting boundaries, as if by asserting yourself you're somehow being unfair, as if protecting your time, energy, or values makes you rude or selfish. But this guilt doesn't come from your conscience. It comes from conditioning. From childhood, many are taught to be agreeable, to be liked, to accommodate. Don't make a fuss. Be nice. Say yes, even if you're tired. Over time, this turns into a reflex. You agree without thinking. You let others make demands and you comply, not because you truly want to, but because you don't want to be seen as difficult. But Nietzsche would argue that this kind of compliance is not kindness. It is a quiet surrender. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you give away a piece of yourself. And over years, those pieces add up, until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize who's looking back. Saying no is not a rejection of others. It is an affirmation of self. It's how you protect your inner space from being trampled. It's how you remind yourself and the world that your presence has weight. The challenge is not just external. It's not only about others demanding too much. The deeper struggle is internal, the voice that tells you that saying no makes you cold, ungrateful, or arrogant. But that voice is not your intuition. It is fear dressed in politeness. Reclaiming the right to say no starts with recognizing that you have a right to your limits. Your energy is finite. Your time is precious. Your values are not negotiable. Saying no is not about control. It's about clarity. People may not like it. You might lose approval. You might be misunderstood. But that's the cost of honesty. And if the price of being accepted is being fake, then acceptance isn't worth it. Nietzsche didn't teach us to become rebels for the sake of rebellion. He urged us to stop being hostages to the expectations of others. And often, The most revolutionary act isn't shouting. It's quietly, firmly saying, "That doesn't work for me." Most people see conflict as a problem, something to fix, minimize, or escape. But what if conflict isn't just disruption? What if it's a form of revelation? Nietzsche believed that we come to know ourselves not in still waters, but in storms. It's easy to be calm when nothing is at stake. It's easy to look composed when no one is challenging you. But when pressure builds, when values clash, when opinions collide, something deeper surfaces. You learn what you really believe. You see where your boundaries lie. You discover what matters. Conflict reveals the architecture of your inner world. It shows you your strengths, but also your insecurities. It exposes your loyalties, your unhealed wounds, your unspoken fears. And if you pay attention, it offers a rare chance to meet yourself without pretense. This is why avoiding conflict at all costs is not harmless. It's a way of staying blind to who you are. If you never let the world test your convictions, you won't know if they're really yours. If you always retreat when tension rises, you miss the opportunity to clarify your identity. Of course, conflict can be messy. It can hurt, it can leave scars. But so can avoidance, and those scars are often harder to see, because they don't come from what was said, but from everything that was left unsaid. The goal is not to win every argument. It's not to prove others wrong. The goal is to show up in your own skin, to speak what you believe, to listen without shrinking, to risk friction for the sake of truth. Every meaningful relationship will involve disagreement. Every real conversation will touch nerves, and every person who lives authentically will, at times, be misunderstood. But that's the price of being real. Conflict is not your enemy. It is a mirror. And in that mirror, you don't just see the other, you see yourself. There is a moment in every life when endurance is no longer enough, when being strong by staying silent becomes a burden too heavy to carry. When you realize that survival is not the same as living. Nietzsche described transformation as a spiritual evolution, not a sudden change, but a painful shedding of illusions. First, you are the camel, obedient, tolerant, willing to bear the weight of rules and roles. You take pride in being the one who never complains, never breaks, never pushes back. But eventually, something inside begins to resist. The strength that once kept you upright begins to feel like chains. And then comes the lion, the part of you that starts to say, enough. Not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. You begin to reject what was once sacred. You stop accepting what once seemed necessary. Becoming the lion is not about violence. It's about reclaiming power. It's the courage to unlearn obedience, to confront the inner dragon of you must, you should, you're supposed to. These are the voices that shaped your childhood, your relationships, your sense of self. And now, you must face them and challenge them. But the lion is not the final form. The lion clears the path, but it is the child who creates. The child is free, not because they are naive, but because they no longer carry the weight of roles. They choose, they play, they invent. They are not reacting to the past, they are building the future. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It is slow, raw, and often lonely. But it is necessary, because staying a camel may win you applause, but it won't give you peace. The lion may lose favor, but it gains truth. And the child, free, honest, whole, gains everything. Many dream of being free. Few understand what it demands. Freedom is not simply the absence of control. It is not the luxury to do whatever you want. It is the discipline to live in alignment with your truth, even when it costs you comfort, acceptance, or safety. Nietzsche taught that becoming who you are is not automatic. It is a battle. And the first enemy is not the world. It's the part of you that fears judgment, avoids conflict, and plays roles to be liked. To live authentically, you must risk being seen clearly. That means revealing your edges, not just your polish. It means standing firm when others push back. It means disappointing those who only love the version of you that stays quiet. But real freedom does not come from pleasing others. It comes from knowing what you believe and being willing to say it out loud. Every time you stay silent to avoid tension, you train the world to ignore your boundaries. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you teach yourself that your truth is optional. And eventually that inner voice, the one that knows what you need, goes quiet. To reverse this, you must act, speak, clarify, set lines. Not because you want to fight, but because you want to live honestly. Freedom is earned in small moments, in the refusal to lie to be liked, in the courage to leave when respect is gone, in the decision to stay loyal to your values, even when you're the only one in the room who holds them. You will lose things on this path: approval, familiarity, maybe even relationships. But what you gain is not just autonomy. You gain yourself. And there is no freedom greater than that. In the end, the question is not whether conflict is necessary, but whether you are willing to face it when it matters most. Silence may feel safe, but it is a slow form of disappearance. Every time you choose to stay quiet when your soul wants to speak, you vanish a little more, and the world learns to ignore you not out of malice, but because you taught it to. Nietzsche did not ask us to fight for the sake of violence. He asked us to awaken, to become who we truly are by shedding the layers of obedience, fear, and false morality. This is not the easy path. You will be misunderstood. You will lose approval. You will feel the weight of solitude, but in return, you will find your spine, your truth, yourself. Freedom is not given, it is seized, and conflict, when met with courage and clarity, is not your enemy. It is your proving ground. So the next time your voice trembles, speak anyway. The next time you're tempted to agree just to avoid discomfort, pause and ask, what am I betraying? Because your life is too sacred to be spent in quiet resignation. If you want to be free, you must stop being afraid of conflict. Start now. Speak, stand, exist,